Alex, thank you for doing this. Full disclosure, I do know you personally. You are my brother, which makes this even more amazing. How are you feeling?
Man, I'm like, there's both a feeling of like, ooh, like this is
what was that sound?
I don't know, man. Like we're in a nice building, like upper stories, looking over London. So there's that feeling of elevation, but at the same time, I got my brother here with me. So there's that feeling of being at home as well.
Yeah. And are you thirsty? Are you tired? Because you've been running a lot this year. You've been traveling around, running.
The emotions are very much like, there is that sort of simmering of things. Like there's fatigue there, but there's also joy. And there's also that, man, like, I want more. There's still hunger. There's also like satisfaction. So there's a lot of contrast in emotions that are all simmering.
Yeah.
And I like that process of sort of like defragmenting all the emotions that you've had over the course of the season and creating a full picture.
People are going to get a treat today because a lot of times we talk about motivation, getting up after falling down, progressively growing, and all these things that sometimes seem kind of like mental, nebulous, ethereal, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Whereas today, I think you're like a walking embodiment of a lot of these different things. So we can have some real life context, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But before all of that, I should start by saying that I am super proud of you, right? For a number of reasons. One, silverware is always great, especially at the World Championships. We'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I guess just how you've handled yourself over years of, like, athletics is a brutal sport, right? Because it's like a few fractions of a second, you're not even on the podium, and a few fractions of a second, you're celebrating, and everyone in your team is like, it was all worth it. Yeah. So how you've navigated the last few years of setbacks, getting back up, like all of that, to this moment where you're having an unbelievable season, for me, like, I'm just proud of the person that's navigated that and not just even the silverware.
Man. So I feel like I've been ambushed there with that. Like, I had a lot of positivity, them ones where you're like, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Nah, but that's a special compliment there, because that touches on the shift that I've tried to make in my perspective of identifying more with the traits that enable me to get to the silverware rather than the silverware itself. So like you said, the resilience, the being able to bounce back, those are the things that I've tried to shift my identity onto, so that when silverware comes, there's that feeling of it's worth it. But when you miss it, you don't feel like you've lost your identity, You feel like, okay, cool, this is just another stepping stone. And that, like, if I'm not where I aim to be yet, then that just means the story isn't over. So that's the kind of story that we're telling, and I'm just really, like every beat has been in line with that.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, sport, obviously, if anyone listens to this podcast, they've probably heard me talk about sport before. It holds a very special place in my heart. And I think it's probably one of the best, again, leitmotifs for exploring life, because yes, you're on a podium smiling, and someone might just be walking across their TV and they just see you on a podium. They're like, oh, that's nice. Mm-hmm. What they don't know is all the stuff that went into that, you being on that podium. So I'm hoping this podcast can kind of uncover what some of the behind the scenes looks like. Yeah. But also that people listening to this, whether you're an athletics fan or not, you can kind of pick out things that you can use in your life as well for making sense of hardship, overcoming hardship, that sort of stuff. So we should probably start with how you got into running. Did it choose you? Did you choose running? Like, how did that all start?
It very much chose me at the time and place in my life where I needed it to. Running itself has always been like one of those passions. Like I feel like everyone growing up, and if you had some speed to you, like you had that era where your speed was part of you, you know what I mean? Like primary school, everyone's racing each other, you're trying to race your parents, and I have fond memories of that, but I never thought we'd take it this far until I found my community, until I found my coach, until I found my training group, and I felt like this feels like somewhere I can be day in, day out, putting in the work. and the work was matched with that sense of belonging. And I think that was very important.
So you started off, were you the fastest in class, for instance?
You know what? I wasn't. Shout out Donnell. We'd have these. So what would happen? There'd be like everyone's in the playground, and then they'd call in like class 3C, and then everyone would run for the queue. And for some reason, it was always the same order. It was Donnell, then it was Joseph, and then it was me. And then one day I was second, and then another day, like I don't even think we raced for the queue at that point, but me and Donnell had a race. He was like, I think you're faster than me now. I was like, I don't think so, bro. And then he was like, all right, let's race. We put in a good race and I won. And man, like he handed over the mantle to me. He was so gracious. I still don't understand to this day. So shout out Donnell. You really gave me a confidence.
You guys still friends?
We still keep in touch from time to time.
That.
Yeah. That's primary school. Yeah.
So something must have went wrong because you chose 400 meters. So what is wrong with you and why did you choose? Because for people who don't know athletics, right? So, you know, I'm nowhere near sort of world championship level. I should preface by saying that. But I remember, like, you know, I used to run 100 meters and we would have training and then we'd done 4 120s. You're like, oh God, 420s. Then you look at the 400 meter guys, you know, and they're just like, they're climbing walls or something. Or you're like, what are you guys doing today? No, we're just scaling the gherkin. You're like, what? Just the most random sessions, you know, 12 500s. You're like, why did you choose 400 meters? Like, who chooses?
It was like a lot of people, these discussions still happen. Like even in the GB camp, they'll be like, like the 100 guys will be like, I'll take you over 350. Everyone's trying to beef over different distances.
Yeah.
But I feel like people respect the steez of the 400 guy. For me, it was a case of I transitioned from rowing. I was doing that in school.
Nice.
And that really taught me how to work hard in a structured way. It was a lot of endurance, a lot of running, a lot of on the ergo. And then I was doing running training at the same time. And I just kind of thought, I'm good at the sprints and I've got just bags of endurance that are kind of sitting there for no reason.
Yeah.
Let me use that and put that to the 400. And it took shape.
Give people a sense of what training for the 400 meters is like. Because I actually think that should be a podcast episode in and of itself.
Most definitely.
Like, how do you guys prepare for 400 meters?
The 400 is basically like you put yourself through the worst pain imaginable week in, week out, so that the race itself can be slightly less painful, but it will still be painful. So there comes a point where you embrace the fact that it's gonna hurt regardless. And it's just about how much I commit to the training, to the process, and to the racing itself. But I think there's something liberating about it because you're like, I mean, the result's the same, you know, like the feeling's gonna be the same. I might as well be quicker.
Yeah.
And that, like, I think there's a camaraderie that comes between 400 guys where in the cool room, I don't know if you remember the 100 meter cool rooms, but I enjoy being in there, just seeing everyone trying to psych each other out and just knowing the 400 cool rooms so chill in comparison. Because everyone's just like, look, we're all idiots. Like, I respect you for doing your training and we're just going to go out there and have a good run. So.
Because there's really no way around it. The 400 meters is just that last 80, 60 meters, everything can change.
Everything can change.
You can go from 5th to 1st in like 30 meters. Yeah. And like where 100 meters is obviously all about execution. Like, you know, everyone has an equal drive phase really. And you have a short amount of time to sort of to make a change if you like. With 400 meters, it's just torture. Hence why I always just look at 400 meter and just go, it's something up there must be sort of, you must enjoy pain. It's like, why? Like, because it is painful now.
It is painful. Yeah. And it never stops being painful, really.
And people who don't run may be asking, so I'm really asking for them. They might be thinking, why would you subject yourself to that pain? Hey there, just want to say thank you for listening or for watching this podcast. We have a great desire to grow this podcast. And one of the ways we're going to do that is if you listening, follow, or if you are watching, you subscribe to the podcast. The faster it grows, the more guests we can get, but also the better the podcast gets. So please just do me a favor, hit the subscribe button or the follow button. Back to the episode.
You know what it is? It's the thrill of knowing that there's always something to improve on. I feel like the 400 is one of those events where you can put every single detail under the microscope. And there's a real sense of ownership when you put yourself through pain. I don't know how to explain it. It's like this sense of like, I'm choosing this. And I know that when I feel this, it leads to growth. And I think, not to make it too philosophical, but like life's like that, isn't it? You when you opt in for a challenging scenario where you know you're gonna feel that discomfort, and you're aware that growth's on the other side, you really change your relationship with that discomfort, and you can push your limits. And I think that sense of like, I am never a finished product, is why I became very addicted to that feeling in the 400.
And we'll talk about that in a lot more detail. I mean, a bit more in your journey. So, you know, Donnell hands you the mantle, you become the sort of fastest in the school, and then, you know, you start picking it up more, you do more. Is it then just like a meteoric ride to the top? Like, sort of what happens next, you know, sort of moving through juniors, under 21s, all that sort of stuff?
I'll be real, there's been one meteoric rise, 2 meteoric rises in my entire career, and a lot of like bedrock for which those meteoric rises happened. One of them was 2016, when I was my first year under 20 athlete, and I was very inexperienced, but I had all that work behind me in the rowing. And then I decided that I was going to commit to this athletics thing. And it was first year sixth form, and then the season started. I didn't know what to expect. I kind of ran. I felt I didn't feel the race went well. It was a hotly contested field, but I didn't understand what the time would be. So I remember I go off sulking and go and get a McDonald's. I'd already given up. First race of the season, I'm like, yeah, nah, we got to get a Big Mac in. Like, this isn't working. And then I get a call from my coach, and he's like, where are you? And I'm like, just getting food. He's like, well, come back. You've just run a PB. I was like, what kind of PB? He's like, you just run 49. And sub 50.
That's a big thing, man.
For 400 runners, any 400 runner sub 50, you remember that. That's a big deal. And you work tirelessly to get there. And that was like an effort that I didn't feel happy with. So then I realized, all right, we're cooking with something here. And I kept at it. By the end of the season, I was running 47.4. So I'd cut 4 seconds from my PB initially in that one season. And I just kind of, like everyone, you assume that's just how it's going to go from now on. I'm going to run a world record next year. It's going to be, it was then another like few years of struggle, a good World Juniors campaign. And then the next rise happened, I'd say it was chipping away. Next rise happened last year and the end of the season before, where I got my first 45, and then suddenly I was running 45.5, and then last year at Worlds I ran 45.0.
So and that Worlds last year, what place did you come?
I came 10th.
And how did you? Were you happy that it was still Worlds? Like, how did that? Because that must have been bits of sweet, right?
I'll tell you what. No, it was sweet. It was sweet.
Okay.
The reason it was sweet, I don't know if anyone saw, you know, the mixed relay. So the mixed relay is the first event of the champs, and I was on the team for the mixed relay. We're running the heats, and I've been running relays all year, and every time I hit the track, it was a 44.4. I don't feel good today. It was a 44.7. I feel good today. It's 44. I was like, I missed a 44 split over the relay. The relay, I'm cool. I'm just gonna focus on my individual. And I remember I came late to the meeting the day before that race, and I was in trouble, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna prove him wrong. I'm gonna run a 43 split tomorrow. So when I went out in that relay, I went out and I fell apart. And I ran a 47 split. And maybe people at home won't really remember this or would have seen it, but when you're in the camp, it feels like everyone's seen it. Yeah. It feels like that's all anyone sees in you. So there were 3 days there between that and my individual where I was forced to confront my limitations in a way that I'd never confronted them before, to be honest, because there's always that safety net. But there I'd been taken to the highest heights of athletics, and I felt like I'd been exposed in a way that I'd never been exposed before. So there were 3 days of just intense prayer and intense And this feeling of like, this could just be it. Like I could just not be in shape right now because it had been a long season by that point. I've been chasing standards. So this could just be it. And I might just go and embarrass myself again. Or this could be a lesson and God could have something great in store for me right now. But he's the one who decides. And that was a real moment of complete surrender. And the more I surrendered, the more empowered I felt. And then when I got out on the start line of the heat, I was just like, you know what? I'm just here to fight and God will do the rest. And then I got through to the semi. And then when I ran that PB in the semi, I didn't even know what the time was. I was grateful because I knew that exactly what happened there was a product of my surrendering. And it was more than I could have done on my own. So yeah, it was sweet. It was sweet. Looking back, you're like, oh man, maybe if I just done that, then I would be it's so easy to do that. But in the moment, that's honestly, like, I couldn't have asked for anything more than that. And I feel like there are many moments where that's been the case this season and last. And when you put it in context of that, it's just gratitude. And that's a good foundation for any kind of propulsion, you know?
I think there's two really powerful things that came out of that, what you just said. One is this idea of like sort of exposure, be it seen as it's a bad thing. If you get exposed in school, it's like, you got exposed. It's that sort of thing. But exposure is so key to growth because if you can't see areas and parts of your whatever you're doing, your development that you need to improve, you actually never get better. So if you're someone listening, for instance, and you work at a bank, as it were, and and your job is to do X, Y, and Z, well, you kind of need to be aware of areas of improvement if you're going to improve. But I think sometimes we're very scared of, something about our preparation being exposed because we associate exposure with sort of only negative emotions, not seeing it as it's like light being shone on something, which means actually that's an area that now I can optimize around or work around.
Most definitely. And that's a key area of your mind to reinforce, because I think it's easy when you're in that preparation phase to be like, you might see challenges, you might, but you're never quite forced into that place of reconciling with whether everything's good enough or not.
Yeah.
You just kind of want to fire off and see what happens. You're always thinking about the result, and you're always going to be optimistic about your preparation. And then when the find out phase happens, you open the box and Schrodinger's cat is dead. And you're like, yeah, it's easy to really identify with that. And that feeling of course, when you're at the top level and everyone's operating at such a high sort of like level of performance, and you're used to seeing people who can just bang it out, there's that feeling of like, I don't want to be the fraud here. I don't want to be the fraud. Everyone identifies with high performance. And if I get exposed, then I'm the one who doesn't belong. And I think I've learned to be grateful for it, but the sting will never go away. Like I think it's that public nature of it. It's that feeling of, I wish this was more private. I wish I got to address this in private so I could come out and everyone's like, wow, he's so perfect.
Yeah.
Because as you're saying, like, when people pass on the TV and see you on the podium, that's kind of the part they consume, that's the part. And then once they see you on that 2-3 times, then they begin to emotionally invest. And it becomes a case of like, I am expecting you to give me that feeling of satisfaction I get after you race because I know you're going to win. And we were spoiled with that, with like the likes of Mo Farah and Usain Bolt, because they just kept doing it and they made it look easy. So you want to identify with that. You don't want to identify with the guy who's down here one day and up here the next day, because it's too real, So I think one of the key things was to identify that A, I'm not a finished product. I'm never a finished product. And B, I'm not here to be consumed. I am very much on a journey, and I'm a human being, and there will be times where your preparation is humiliatingly like shown to the light as not good enough.
I think as you're saying that, J.K. Rowling comes to mind. So she gave a commencement speech at Harvard once, and she spoke about failing and how she finished university. She kind of went out to the world to try and make something of herself, and she failed. She was exposed, and she said that she failed so much that her biggest fear growing up was being like poor. and she had become poor, and so she had like a baby, she was poor, and she was like, wow, I'm at rock bottom, as it were. And she then she said something kind of that I found really powerful. I think I wrote a couple of newsletters about it, where she spoke about kind of when she failed and she was like exposed, as it were, and she hit rock bottom. She said that rock bottom became sort of like a firm foundation for her to build her life back on. And then she said something about how if you live a life, I suppose, where you're never in a position where you could fail, then you'll live in such a parochial and sort of careful life that you've already failed by default, because that life is not your most authentic life, because it's such a, you know, it's one of those things like if you only ever raced, if I was like 29 and I only ever raced like 12-year-olds or something, you know, and I'm like, I'm always going to win. It's like, mate, yeah, you're always gonna win, but like that's not your best self. You've created this really safe space for you to always have your way. Whereas what I ought to do is get into the big leagues, put myself out where I could actually be exposed, I could fail, and from there I would get better. And as you were talking about exposure, the very, very vivid memory in my mind, very, very small, but I remember it so vividly, was when, so I'm a Christian, and I remember when I was younger, my youth leader once was like, oh, you're going to preach on Sunday, and I was like, that's easy. Oh, man, I could do that, that's easy, that kind of thing, right? So I remember on that Sunday I went, I kind of wrote something down, but my goal was to just like mimic what the pastor had done. I was very young. So I went out and I flopped so hard. Like I was like, see when you could see someone burning on stage, like I was kind of like stuttering, making mistakes, and I felt so bad. I felt like everyone was laughing at me. It was so clear that I did not, I wasn't ready for this. I stepped off the stage. She came to me next and she was like, you didn't prepare, did you? And I was like, no. I was like, no. And she was like, next time prepare. And I just remember that being like, wow. Now, looking back, it was like 12 people in the audience, right? It wasn't that many people. But that feeling of being exposed stuck with me, such that now that I might speak on a stage of 10,000 or 20,000, you won't catch me not prepared. Like that's just not a thing. I'm now the king of you must be prepared. You must be prepared. But I had to have that moment of being kind of humiliated, and that catapulted me. Now with you're talking about exposure. What did that mean for this year's campaign then, as you started to take the starting line? What did last year do for you this year or last season?
Wow. No, that's a good question, because I can definitely relate with that. Rock bottom feels like a firm foundation, and then everything else feels almost like this cushy fake protection that you devise for yourself. Like, oh, I'm a European champion and stuff. So I feel like I did come into this season with a certain level of expectation and a certain level of like removal from my rock bottom, which had become somewhat familiar, somewhat secure. That feeling I've got nothing to lose. I'm scrappy, I'm fighting, I'm the rabid guy at the back who's going for heads. Yeah. And everyone I beat here is a bonus. And then suddenly it's like, you're that guy now, and everyone's coming for your head. And getting to that start line and feeling a sense of fear that I didn't have before, but trying to reconcile with that. And then you're faced with two options then. One of the options is return to familiarity. You let go of everything that you've kind of accomplished, and let go of all the brand deals that you've secured, and all the funding that you've secured, and all the support from people around you that now like puts you in a place where there's more pressure and more expectation. It was this sense of like, I don't want it. Because I prefer when I was like eating everything out of a cereal bowl, like in my one bed, like, you know, you're thinking of the struggle and you're identifying with that with comfort. But then there's the recognition, the acknowledgement of your authenticity. And that is that you have progressed to a new level, and that requires adaptation. Like that requires evolution and an ownership of where you're at now. You have, yes, expectation, but you also have a lot more resources at your disposal to be able to attain the next chapter. you can delegate things now. So there are a lot of things that came with it, and it was about accepting this new reality and being able to make that my new bedrock.
How have you, mate? That's a really interesting thought, because I'm curious as to how you've done that. Because I think when you're hustling, again, let's say you're trying to start a business, for instance, for like 2, 3, 4, you get really used to hustling, as you said. Like hustling becomes your new normal. So when you do get it, it's like, it feels almost like I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're now not a hustler. I remember someone telling me once, they're like, yeah, we're hustling. I looked at it, I was like, I'm not really a hustler anymore, mate. If I want, like I've had the hustle phase of my life where it's like, but I'm not a hustler. But I do think like you get so accustomed. So with you, if you've been fighting for so long just to sort of get there, and then you're the reigning British champ, like do you take that in, that you're no longer trying to be British champ? You are the current British champion. Hey there, just want to say thank you for listening or for watching this podcast. We have a great desire to grow this podcast, and one of the ways we're going to do that is if you listening follow, or if you are watching, you subscribe to the podcast. The faster it grows, the more guests we can get, but also the better the podcast gets. So please, just do me a favor, hit the subscribe button or the follow button. Back to the episode.
It's hard to absorb because you haven't got the infrastructure to, like, you have to let go of some old identities and some old traits, and you have to introduce some new ones. And you're doing that in real time, especially if your come up is very quick. So I think that's why they kind of say like the bright candle like burns out quicker, because I believe that's because of that sensation of G-force, where you have to make changes, very deep internal changes, to be able to identify with your new situation without letting go of the things that made you you. And I don't feel like I've done it flawlessly this year. I feel like there's still a lot of processing to do, but I think I've become a lot more aware of that needs to happen, because I think I fell into the trap early season of thinking I've got the formula now, I just need to hustle, and if I get in my way and I fight, then I've like, this is what all these people don't get.
Yeah.
I've got something that these people don't, and that's that hustler's mentality. But then you realize that actually the thing that I've got isn't some form of fixed mentality, it's the ability to adapt.
This is it.
And now you've got to adapt. Now you've got to see what people are doing around you.
I love that. I think it's your say. I was wondering, do you prefer chasing or being chased?
Chasing. But then that's kind of turning you too. Like that's something I would have. I'm programmed to say that without hesitation, because that's kind of been my reality for years. But now, maybe that's not my best, like my best form of doing things. Yeah. Next year I might be way out in front, and then have to adapt to the fact that I'm no longer chasing. I'm being chased, and that's fine. I can still gain that sense of flow from it and that sense of hunger. Yeah. But that's a hunger to maintain rather than a hunger to obtain, or a hunger to get to the next level, because cool, these people behind me aren't the people that I'm supposed to be. So again, like I did some big races this year, and I lost a lot of big races, and that still hurts because you're losing. But I'm losing races that I wasn't even invited to last year. So I'm in the right place. You know, you gain that new perspective of like the whole vessel is moving, and you might just be navigating your way in that 8-lane track of where you stand in comparison to the new environment that you're in.
That's really good. It reminds me of something Coco Gauff said. She second youngest tennis player to win the US Open since Serena Williams in 1990 I think. 1990 something. Anyways, and she spoke about sort of not praying for results. She was like, I don't pray for results. I just pray to God that I'm able to kind of give my best, as it were, that I'm able to kind of put my most authentic, best self out there. And, you know, tennis is one of those sports where you look at it and you think it's like 90%. People think it's very physical. Tennis, again, someone who plays tennis a lot, is, I would say, almost 80%, I would say, is mental. and 20% is physical. Because at a certain level, you're going to be playing with people who you're kind of physical equals to. Very rarely you're going to be playing with someone who's just ridiculously stronger than you. You're going to be similar. So it's that thing of where you just have to, if whoever's best on the day wins. And I think it's like the same kind of true of athletics to a certain degree in that everyone trains, everyone practices, everyone sacrifices, everyone does that. It's on the day who's best. Like literally World Champs is about that. It's not about times even, which is annoying. I know people who don't watch athletics like, well, there's no world records. You're like, that's not how it works. But she said about sort of, she just wants to put her best self forward and the results will come when they're meant to come. Do you have a similar mindset? Or because I think in athletics it must be quite interesting because of course you want to win. Yeah. But how do you wrestle with that sort of, I've tried my best and second is what I was meant to get versus that should have been mine?
Most definitely. The next thing that I'm looking to delve into deeply and do my research on and try and come to terms with is effective goal setting. And I know that's something that, like you said, like there's things that kind of get thrown around everywhere in all sorts of industries, and as they should, because they're important to every form of life. But like something like this is like, as you said, a living embodiment of that, and you actually get a very small window to get that right. It's like months and months of preparation, and then that small summer window where either all your goals will come to fruition, some of them will come to fruition, or none of them will. And that all comes down to what you're doing in the months and months and months outside. It also comes down to how you connect from one thing to another, and how you set yourself up to be able to, okay, that goal wasn't reached, I'm not going to sulk about it, I'm going to go on to the next. And that part, I think, is something that I really struggled with this year in terms of connecting everything up and being able to feel assured in the kind of flow of things, like assured in the propulsion that was being built up, because there was that sense of like, I had an idea of how everything was going to play out, and now things are playing out different, and I feel lost, and I don't feel like I'm in control of the situation anymore. And I guess I'm just waiting for something to happen so I can feel that sense of control in it. Effective goal setting, again, this is something I still need to dive into, but so far as what I'm aiming for, it's got to be more adaptable than that. It's got to be a sense of I'm in control even when I'm in surrender. And I'm sure even when like I didn't foresee any of this. And the things that I can control, I am exerting as much control over as possible. And I'm secure in the things I can control. And I think also, just gathering data as the season unwinds and being able to use and process that data to be able to set you up for the next time. So you know, all right, I'm going to avoid that, and I'm going to go for that because that works for me. And I think so. Bringing it back to goals, my goals are bigger this year.
Let's go.
This is sick. But I had bigger goals. I wanted to be there in the individual for the 400, and I just missed out on the qualifying time by less than like a fraction of a second. Like we said, it's fractions of seconds. We're working with it. And that like it was a great season. Yeah. So it was a season of lessons and of great success, which is like, it's often you think you either get one or the other, right? So I'm grateful. But there is also a sense of, okay, Paris, I've got the same goal. My goals aren't changing. My goals aren't going down for anyone. Yeah. You know, not even myself, not even my fears. So let's bring a sense of inevitability around those goals. Yeah. And then decide, okay, that goal is fixed. Like not fixed, but that goal is set in my heart, and therefore I'm not shaking on that. How do we navigate a way to get there without having too much of like a controlling mindset where you can't let the process do its thing to get you there, and too much of a lax mindset where you just expect things to play on?
That tension is super hard to get, but you have to sit. It's the bane of my life really, as someone who adopts a very similar mindset to you, to, you know, there's a proverb that says, men can prepare a horse for battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. So to prepare a horse for battle, for a race, like you have to do the work. You have to get it ready. You have to clean out the shoe thing. You really have to make it ready. But the victory that's got nothing to do with you, right? But you still have to do the work to get it ready. Yeah. So that tension is just super tough, especially if you've decided that you're gonna try and achieve your goals in a certain way. And it's doubly hard when you see other people who are not committed to doing it your way. You're like, oh, right, okay, I could do that, but I won't,
that
and
one
it's
is
tough.
Crazy. Nah, like that one really connected, because athletics, like everything's happening at the same time, and I can't tell the amount of times where I had like my plan and I had everything laid out. Yeah. And it felt like I was seeing so many people around, because you're so connected to a wider world. It's not just GB athletes, it's everyone in the world. And it's like, oh, I'm going to do that race, and then I'm going to release that bit straight after. It's going to be perfect. And then you don't get that race. Someone else does, they release it. You're like, yo. Yeah. And you're like, all right, late season, I'm going to do this. I'm going to run 44. Someone late season, last race, they've been running 46, 44. Yo. Yeah. And you're just like, okay, wow, like, God, you're just giving everyone my blessings. Like, what's happening? Like, they're coming to the wrong place. But it's that, like, you forget that your goals they're almost not new, like, because you're operating within a real infrastructure. So if I set a standard, like, I want to run half a second faster, someone inevitably is setting the same goal. Yeah. And they might be doing it a completely different way to you, but there's no guarantee that that's all going to come to you. And I think it's that, like, you really have to keep your head on your shoulders and stop doing that.
Look at that, yeah, literally.
Because your process is your process, and it's easy when your process isn't bearing the fruit that you expected to start to question it and start to waver and start trying to copy notes from others. But more time, it just means that God's just taking you through a period of like, look, man, like, that goal, I've got it. Like, you've submitted your desire to me. I've got it. I've got some stuff to show you first about yourself and about this journey, and about faith. I've got some stuff to show you, and when I take you around that scenic route, and you're ready, I'm gonna give you exactly what you want and more.
I want to talk about the World Championships, but before I do that, it sounds like faith plays a kind of big part in your running. Tell me how it does that. Look, it's odd. I'm asking these questions like I don't know, but I did put a disclaimer at the start that I know you, but this is like a layup. I'm like, so tell me about faith. It's a bounce pass,
Just get that out of you. Yeah, nah, like, as he says, like, every conversation we have, regardless of how materially grounded it is, but it goes to faith. And I think there's something you told me at one point that's really stuck with me ever since. And it was ages ago you said this, but it's stuck with me, is that when people challenge your faith, and when people challenge why you're so committed to scripture, you say, look, I believe this is the truth. And if this is the truth, then inevitably I'm going to come back to it, Like, the truth, you can't the truth doesn't care how you feel about it. Like, the truth doesn't care, I don't know if that fits with my, Like, the truth will remain the truth, and it will wait for you to get there, so long as you're committed to getting to the truth. And I feel that way about athletics, like, in a sense, like, my potential is that pot of truth that's just there waiting for me to get to it.
It's good.
And whether I'm gonna be like world number one, or whether I'm destined to be somewhere in that fighting chance of like finalists, that destiny is set, and I'm just on my way to find it. And therefore it's that feeling of like, okay, the more data I gather along the way, the more trust I have, the more faith I have, then the more I know that God is taking me to that inevitable destination. And once you bring that sense of inevitability to everything you do, whether that's me and my athletics, or you and this, like, I'm sure there was a point in your mind where you're like, this is what's going to happen. And then along the way, it might have seemed like things were going that way, and things are going that way, and things, oh no, we're going backwards. But here we are, And I feel the same about all the goals I've set. It's like, it seems like things aren't going right, and things can't, and then but I'm here now, you know, I'm British champion.
This is it.
And we got a world medal.
Come on.
And these are all goals that I believed were inevitable one day. And in the same vein, I perceive the things that I have higher up as inevitable because I submitted them to the Lord with a very honest heart. And I think, yeah, there are some things that I might have submitted that weren't quite as authentic. And he'll let me know, you know. He always lets you know.
He will. He will. I wish I could frame that moment because everything you said there beautiful. Right, for folks who are listening to us, you won't be able to see this, but we've got some visual cues today that you've brought to us. Your World Athletics Championship medal for the relay from Budapest.
Whoa.
Budapest is a really lovely place. What do you think about Budapest? What goes on behind the scenes? Because I know the like Olympic village. I've heard stories about my friends who are Olympians about the stuff that happens. I don't want to talk about that. What's the World Championship
I'll tell you
like?
what, they exaggerate because everyone wants to be like, yeah, nah, it's lit. Like it's
But think
like
about
when your boy goes
think
to
about all the
Ibiza.
fittest people in the world in one enclosed location. Come on, mate.
You'd think so.
Come on.
But it's like when
I'm
that
kidding,
you
by
got
the
that
way.
one mate who goes to Ibiza. He's like, mate, every day, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's like
He's
maybe
a liar.
one
He's a liar.
thing
Yeah,
happened.
he's a liar. Yeah.
But they run with that story for ages.
What's it like behind the scenes in Budapest?
It's
And
just, you know, it's just really chill. Especially this one. This one really felt like just a bunch of adults on tour handling their business.
really.
Like it was really just this sense of, I remember we had that first relay camp in the holding camp and everyone was just focused. Like. It was just a real sense of like everyone's channeling their focus in, and I couldn't partake in that. I might as well reveal. I had like a tooth abscess. My face was swollen up as I arrived in Budapest.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad.
It was pretty bad. So wow. I needed to get dental work done
Can I
from
take
the
this
moment
out?
I arrived. Sure, man.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, just mess around with it. I think it's quite tough. It's sturdy, you know.
We'll see about that. Get me a knife. I'm joking. Carry on. So you had your tooth was swollen.
So my tooth was swollen. So I was sitting out that session, but I got to observe it. I got to absorb the atmosphere, and I was really just looking around like these people are focused, and yeah, like we got to the hotel, and there's that opportunity, obviously, with the relay, with the last event. So there was that whole week of being able to sort of check stuff out. We were on this beautiful island called Margaret Island, which is in the middle of Budapest, a lot slower form of life, and then you got the city around it. But even then, the city follows this tempo, which is very nice, and the river and stuff. So it was these are cultural experiences, and that's something I never take for granted. Like, we do our running, but then around that there's a lot of traveling to places that I never would have really gotten to see without this sport. So I always try and take that in and have a bed of gratitude to lay on when the performance comes. Of like, I'm in a new place and I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm holding in my hand your bronze medal from the 400-meter relay. I'm handing it over to you, and
Yes, sir.
you're going to tell me exactly what that medal means to you.
This medal in particular means surrender. This means God's there pushing things along, even when you feel like you're not actively like the one on the front line, you know, of the battle. I think, yeah, like as I said, coming in with the health issues, there was that feeling of like, am I going to be able to give to the team here? Am I going to get exposed again type thing? Can I run like type thing? And there's that sense of like, okay, I just need to surrender again. Like, obviously, I'd love to be the one who's the most confident, just taking the lead and leading the charge. But there was that sense of like, I'm going to need something from you, Lord. Like, I can't do this on my own again. And when the time came, that was how it was. I led off on first leg. I handed over the baton. Charlie tucks in. He's in fourth place. And then it's like, now my team's got to do it. Like, I've done my part. I did the best I could. And now my team's got to make something happen, and we all benefit from it. And they did incredibly. Charlie, Rio, Lewis, like massive performances that put us right in that medal contention. And I know, like on a better day, like we could have taken silver as well. Like that wasn't so we're already onto the, like, we got to go for gold next year because we've seen what we can do in a state of surrender. And now once you have that surrender, which is this, God can give you a sense of, it's like, okay, thank you for surrendering to me. Now here's more things for you to control, more things for me to delegate to you. I'll give you your health. I'll give you your, and then there will still be always inevitably a moment of surrender every single season where you have done the preparation and you just have to trust that God's going to do the rest. And God just showed me what happens when he does the rest.
What a guy. Give this man a mic or something. There's a mic in front of you.
Give him one of these.
Give him a medal. Have we got a common sense medal to rival the World Championships? No, mate. I did I think I would ever hold a World Championship medal? I don't know if I ever thought I did. Maybe, but maybe as an old man, maybe I'll start doing. See those old people that do. We have a man actually in my old track. His name's Barry. He's won like so many world champions, but he's like 78 or something. So he does like the old, like veterans sort of like races and stuff. Nice. So sometimes I'm just like, maybe that's the closest I'll get to winning. When everyone else has died, and I'm just like, let's then try and turn, because I think your story is just fantastic. And what I love about your story as well is it's not done yet, is it? Right? The fact that, we've seen you with a bronze medal. You've already committed to coming back with a gold one at some stage for us, and we're going to hold you up to that. So that's great. For people listening to this, I'm just wondering if because there's a lot they can take away from what we've said, but if there's something that people can adopt in their own lives, from sort of the journey you've had to go on, like what would you pass on?
You know what? I reflected on this recently. I was like, what value can I derive from this process? And I think that's I think there's a real power in storytelling. In anything you do, in any pursuit you have. The way you can tell the story surrounding the meaning, the why, the progression around what it is that you're trying to achieve, then I feel like you can really derive a sense of motivation that is able to supersede the circumstances as they come. I like to say, like, create a why, create an attractive force that is stronger than all the obstacles that can come in your way, because then those obstacles are inevitable. But as long as your why is stable and constantly pulling you in the right direction, you can break through them. And I think the most powerful moments for me have been the ones where the story just sits so well with kind of being authentic to me, having like a spiritual significance, having like once I cross this finish line, once I cross this boundary, once I achieve this goal, this testimony is going to be a vessel through which a lot of people can be carried through that door with me. And I think, people should, I think people should pay attention to their personal story and try and tell that in as authentic a way as possible. And once you get new data, that can sometimes be threatening as well, because I believe the ego as well is almost like a compilation of the stories we tell about ourselves. Yeah. And then once you get something that kind of disagrees with a previous story that you told about yourself, like, I'm a hustler, that's a story you're telling about yourself, and suddenly you ain't a hustler no more. Yeah. Then you're like, no, push it away. Yeah. But data's data. Data's valuable. And the sooner you can kind of retweak the story, and if you can do that on the fly, then you're able to just consume and adapt and consume, and like go through moments, passage through moments, and tell that story on the fly and make it just as powerful, but like also adaptive at the same.
Hey there, just want to say thank you for listening or for watching this podcast. We have a great desire to grow this podcast, and one of the ways we're going to do that is if you listening follow, or if you are watching, you subscribe to the podcast. The faster it grows, the more guests we can get, but also the better the podcast gets. So please, just do me a favor, hit the subscribe button or the follow button. Back to the episode. That's really big. I've often spoken about to people the importance of stories. It's odd. I've done a few podcasts now where we also talk about books, and there's books here, and books play a special role in my life. But the reason why that's so key is because I think what sometimes I don't think people fully get is that stories are just or narratives even are just a way of arranging information, right?
Yes.
Or data.
Yes.
So like things happen to all of us, but what the story component is when you say this happened because of that, which then led to this, which then led to that, and we're actually sovereign over that process. And I think people don't get that. So I remember being in maybe year 4, and I was asked to read aloud in class, and I stood up and I started reading, and everyone started laughing at me because I think I just made a mistake or something, but you know, kids can be cruel. So everyone started laughing at me. And in that moment, I think the story that entered my head is, oh, like I'm an idiot. Like I'm not a good reader. I shouldn't read, you know? And I sat down and that became the story in my head. I remember for years just having that story that I'm an idiot. And then what happens is you start seeking confirmation, right? So you start looking around and literally everything that happens, you're like, I'm an idiot. You know,
I'm an idiot. This reinforces it.
Now, I'm a believer. It was only really knowing God, encountering God, and getting that story challenged and hearing a different story about who I was that made me go, hold on, I'm not an idiot. And then find out later on that not only am I very good at reading, I have a massive brain that's built for handling information. I literally read books in like 2 days, and it's so weird because if you told me when I was in year 3, if I would ever be able to read a book that quick, I'd be like, hell no, like I couldn't sound the words properly, whatever. So it's so crazy how the stories we believe end up becoming sort of self-fulfilling prophecies and contribute to our limiting beliefs about who we are, what we think our potential is. So you talking about stories is so important to me, right? As you said that. I guess my last question for you then is, okay, cool. So you're the author in your own, you know, you've got a narrative about yourself. So who are you, and sort of who are you becoming, looking forward? And
man, he's bringing heat today.
Thought might as well go out of the bag, you know. So yeah, riffing those 2 things for me.
You know what? I'm gonna start this in a really you might have seen this coming. I'm a child of God first. It has to be said though, because I think what that means is that you're tapped into an ultimate narrative, a story that's kind of like a story that's already been written, that you're just like you're co-authoring. You know, you're co-authoring, but the big man upstairs already has like a perfect story, a perfect narrative with a great ending and a great middle, and so long as you're prepared to surrender and co-author with him and really let him into that process, you have access to that ultimate narrative. So that's why I put that first, and then second I'd say I'm a discoverer. Like I'm an explorer, and I'm led by my curiosity. And I think I'm also an artist. I think there's a level of artistry around even when I'm doing the very mundane scientific of training day in, day out, where these sequences have to have a sense of beauty and inspiration to them for me to feel the sense of meaning that propels them forward and propels my career forward. It's not just enough to do X, Y, Z and get like something as a result, get medal as a result. It has to be X, Y, Z with meaning, and then this suddenly means something. Imagine if I just come on here and you'd be like, what does this mean to you? And I'd just be like,
it's a metal, innit?
see what I mean?
Bronze, innit? Like, it's bronze.
Like, what more is there to say? But like, no, this is like the colors are almost the last thing I see. Like the weight of it, everything has a meaning attached to it. Everything has a meaning attached to it. And I think once you really flesh your life out with meaning, it's like when you put love into food, it's like when you put love into art, you can sense the soul that's in it, even though the components themselves don't seem that. So I'm an accumulation of components where I grew up, who I grew up with, my family, my brother here today, and my brother here sat in front of me. Like you are someone who feeds into the components that comprise me, but then the sense of exploration, adaptation, being a survivor, being resilient, these are all things that I'm now being able to identify with and say, that is something that is going to remain from the start of my story to the end. Being a child of God is start and end. Being resilient, start and end. Being an artist, start and end. And that's exciting when you start to really find the core of who you are, what it is unshakable, unchangeable, but also recognizing that the changes that are happening around it are very beautiful. So to answer your question about who I'm becoming, I think I'm very now like being able to see my core. You almost develop a sense of like where I'm going next is a development of my core components. Now I'm no longer the scrappy chasing athlete. I got a couple of these. I got some European ones at home and I got a British one as well. So these are factors that contribute to my sense of identity. They're not as big as they used to be, thank God. But they are factors that contribute to what my new bedrock is. It isn't rock bottom. And it may be if in God's plan it's supposed to be rock bottom, but it's not for me to decide that I want my rock bottom back. My bedrock is now somewhere different. It's rooted in achievement and it's rooted in expectation, yes. But in that there is a sense of I've done it, I've done the climb, and there is a lot more to climb, but I know that I'm a climber now. I know that I can climb because I've climbed before. And I think this process of becoming, it makes you realize that some things that were kind of going on inside you that you felt that you didn't per se like about yourself, once you kind of accept those as what they were trying to do within you, like that sense of like self kind of abandonment came from a place of wanting better for yourself. You took losing so hard because you knew you were capable of this. And then you can kind of come to terms with it, you can accept it and then say, thank you very much for your service in making me uncomfortable enough to push for this. Now I'm ready for something new. I'm ready to integrate something new. And yeah, like in a way, I'm in this cocoon and I don't know what butterfly is going to come out.
Oh, look at this guy.
I love that. Like it's ongoing. But what I can tell you is that core will remain.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, mate, listen, we do this obviously away from cameras. So what's happened today is folks have got a chance to listen in on a conversation we would have had anyways. I'll go back to the start. I think the reason why I'm genuinely beaming with pride is because I think it's just nice when the personal growth that's happening meets like medals and like it's just nice. But even if it didn't happen, the win is sounds cliche, but it's true. It's the journey, right? that is the win. It's just, I think it's so important for people to see it, because I get questions all the time about things or at events or whatever, and people ask about like accomplishments and bits and bobs, and I wish they could sort of see it, like it's from my perspective, because it really doesn't matter. It's nice for sure, but the journey of becoming, believe in your own hype, building good reputation with yourself, actually believing you're going to do things when you say them, becoming someone who's integral. Like all those things are so much more meaningful than like a new award or you're now the number one. It's like, yeah, that's good, you know, but that's not it. That's not why we do this. And I think if you put a lot on the reward or the medal or the accomplishment, I think it will cave under the expectation, because it can't handle the weight of the expectation you have on it. So when you get it, it just feels a bit like, it's like when I wanted the PS2 or whatever, and that's all I wanted. When I got it, it was like it couldn't handle all the expectation I had built up. So inevitably I was disappointed. Yeah. But now I've found I can put my expectation on something else. So I don't have to put it on that, and so I can achieve that as a byproduct of all the internal wins I'm having. You've always been a champion. You've always been a world medalist. It just so happens that now it manifests on the outside, but you've been this guy.
That was created
That's it.
Before it could ever.
We should stop because I think we're going to start preaching. But thank you so much for doing this. I think this is a nice thing we've done, and I hope somebody, and I know somebody will derive a lot of value from it, and it can be a timepiece because we can look back at this in future years and see sort of how things have changed.
That's the best part. That's the best part about stories. You get to keep those. I might lose this. I'll try not to.
Yeah.
You get to keep those stories.
Is it insured? Yeah, do you get to insure it? Anyways, thank you so much for doing this, Alex.
Not at all. It was a pleasure.
Oh,